Well, hello, educator friends, and welcome back to another episode of the School Life series. It is good to be back. So after a couple weeks off from me being on the road at the PLA and TLA conferences, I am super excited to share another episode, and I'm fired up for this one, not just because I'm sharing more positivity and content for educators, but I'm really excited for today's guest. So today we have second grade teacher with us, Jenna, and she is from New York. And like several of my other guests, the Get Your Teach On Network brought us together and connected us. And I have been impressed with Jenna from day one, not just with her teaching, but also the amazing content and positivity that she shares with educators. And that's what I'm all about. So, Jenna, thank you for taking the time today. Really
Thank
appreciate you coming on.
thank you so much, Ross. I am so excited to be here and to speak to all my educator friends. This means so much. And I'm so excited we connected also at Get Your Teach On because it's such an
Yeah,
amazing community and that we can talk today. So
yeah,
thank you so much for
awesome.
having me.
Yeah, you bet. Thank you. So I know you're on spring break, so you're taking some time on your downtime here. But I like to start out with just you introducing yourself on a personal note first. So tell our listeners and our audience, who are you?
Sounds good. So my name is Jenna. I'm a wife to my husband, Kyle. I also have a dog named Troy. He is a little wiener dog. He is the best. He is so funny. He always keeps us laughing. And when I get home from school every day, I always find myself walking him. He is the best. But I'm also a soon to be mom. I actually have a baby boy. I'm going to have a baby boy coming in August. So that's really exciting. So we'll see how, we're so excited for the changes that will happen in our lives and all the good things. So I've always been, here are some of my passions. I've always been an athlete and I played a ton of sports growing up. So
Mhm.
I actually went to SUNY Cortland, which is a school in New York, and I ran track and field there. And I've always been part of teams. And that has always helped me to maintain a really healthy lifestyle. And right now, so, obviously I don't run track and field anymore, but I still
Yeah.
work out. I go to Orange Theory and I kickbox and I still lead a healthy lifestyle. And that's always been part of who I am and what I love to do. One more thing is I live right near the beach and I've always loved living near water in New York, which is really special. I live in a place called Long Island. And this, you can find me in the summer when I'm not teaching in the classroom. I'm usually riding my bike and reading a book on the boardwalk near me.
That's cool. I love that. And I'm sure you share like your passions and just your healthy lifestyle with your students, which
Yep.
hopefully, in return, like they will look to you as a role model and want to do the same. I love that. Just curious, Jenna, what did you run participate in track and field?
Oh, I love that question. So I was a sprinter. So
Okay.
my favorite event was the 200-meter dash. And I was always a short sprinter. So I always ran the 100-meter, 200-meter, and then occasionally the 400-meter dash too. I like
Awesome.
to kind of know where I'm going and then get there really
That's
fast.
awesome.
So
I love that.
yeah,
So I ran the 800 and then the 4x8 relay in high
nice.
school. And yeah, then after when I started teaching, I coached high school track for a few years. And then I was like, you know what? I like middle school better. So then I moved down. I coached middle school track for a few more years. And so, yeah, a small world, but I love track and field. I love, one thing you talked about just being on a team, but like track and field, you've got sprinters, you've got
Yep.
throwers, you've got distance, and you all have to work together if you want to win a meet. Like
Yep.
you could be the fastest 100-meter dash runner in the state of New York, but if you don't got all these other pieces working together, then your team's not going to win a single meet, right?
Hmm.
So I
Yep.
love that. I love that. Just like bringing that into education, into the classroom, talking to students about that. So speaking of education, tell us about your journey as an educator. I mentioned, you're in second grade now, but
Yep.
where did you start your educational journey, and why also did you become a teacher?
So I have wanted to become a teacher since I was in second grade. I had this really amazing teacher when I was in second grade. Her name was Miss Dean. She was actually a new teacher to the school. But what really, I mean, even though she was a new teacher, it didn't matter to us that she hadn't been there for years, because she still loved us so much and had the best relationships with us. I remember my friends and I, we are still close to this day, but we talk about making her this giant birthday crown. And that just shows you, that's like a testament to the relationships that we had with her. And we still like go back and visit her, but she was an amazing teacher. And I've just always have this, I wouldn't want to do anything else. This is my passion. This is what I was put on this earth to do. And it's funny that now I'm a second grade teacher because everything came full circle. But I started my teaching career in Manhattan, which is in New York City. And I started in the middle of October, which is a really hard time for educators know. It's an incredibly hard time to start a full-time teaching career, basically. And I struggled a lot with classroom management. I loved my students. I always had a good relationship with them, but I was not confident in my own teacher skin. And I always had difficulty. I had difficulty in the beginning so much with classroom management, but then everything worked out. I had an amazing year. I fixed so many things. I read so many books, and I learned so much along the way. And I think that my New York City teaching experience has really made me into the teacher I am today. So I taught there for 5 years, and now I'm actually in a suburb of Long Island, and I've been here for 6. So I've been teaching for 11 years, and now I teach second grade here.
Second grade. I love that. I love
Yeah.
that story. Every guest I have on here, I would say I almost 9 out of 10 guests, I guess, it always goes back to someone in their school years,
Mhm.
right? A teacher that
Yep.
changed their life, that changed their trajectory, or just inspired them to teach on their own. So I was the same way. And mine was my second grade teacher. So another
Aw,
we
love
have,
that.
and so Mrs. Arthur, and to this day, she'll still text me. I actually was her principal for a while, which was
Oh,
really
wow.
crazy.
Love
But
that.
yeah, she's retired, and now I've moved on a little bit as well. So thank you for sharing, about your education
Yep.
journey and your second grade, and that you kind of started hitting on classroom management, right? And this
Mhm.
has been a huge hit for you,
Yeah.
sharing classroom management strategies. And so we're going to talk more about that in the open floor. But
Sounds good.
you have a pretty large following on social media. Like I said, you share some amazing content on social media as well. So let's just take a minute and dive into that. So, how do you use social media? What do you use it for? And connect a little bit to our audience with that.
Yep, I love that. So I've always had basically this something within me, this fire within me to help teachers. And I
Mhm.
do have my educational leadership degree, and I've always was drawn to helping teachers because I know I struggled so much when I first became a teacher, and I feel like teachers need so much support. And a lot of times their schools are very supportive, but teachers also need support from it. So it helps to have support also outside of the classroom as well. And I started my platform. It's called That Strong Teacher. And I created That Strong Teacher because for so many reasons, I created this name of That Strong Teacher. So I was thinking about a name for a while for my platform. And I thought about how, as a new teacher, you always compare yourself to that strong teacher down the hall. I know
Yeah.
when I first started, I was in a third grade classroom. I always compared myself to my grade partner who had amazing classroom management. She had been teaching probably for 10 plus years. She got sure kids listened and followed directions right away. And I was always comparing myself to her. But here's the thing that we realize: you can't compare your chapter 1 to someone else's chapter 21.
Right.
And this took me so long to realize. But then when I started to become that strong teacher, right, I started to become confident in my own teacher skin. And I hope to inspire other teachers on my platform to feel the same way, basically. And also, strong is actually an acronym. And I'll tell you about it right now. It's
Yeah.
pretty
Love to
cool,
hear.
because I was thinking about all the things you need to be effective at classroom management. So the S stands for start with a positive mindset. So we have to have a really great mindset with classroom management because we have to believe that we can learn and grow. And we are basically I say like the thermostat for our classroom, because our energy really affects our students every single day.
Yeah.
Right. And I started to realize that as a new teacher, the calmer that I was and the more confident I was, the better my students did and
Yeah.
the more they started to grow. So that's the S in strong. The T is having a top classroom management plan. And that's what my course is all about, is building your classroom management foundation for success. And if you don't have a classroom management foundation, then it's going to be really hard to actually teach all the subject areas. So you need that first, right?
Yeah.
And then the R is to build relationships with your students. Building relationships is number one. And this more, I feel like, comes naturally to teachers because teachers are naturally loving and caring, and they love their students, which is great. But there are always ways we can improve our relationships as well. The O is organized. So I teach in my course also how for the teacher to be organized, but also teaching your students to be organized so that your classroom runs smoothly. The N is about nurturing with social emotional learning. I know social emotional learning is the backbone of my classroom. And I just love teaching my students how to be good humans, especially in second grade when there's so much to learn.
Mm-hmm.
And the G is about getting prepared and then always having your lessons ready, because the more ready you are, the more ready your students will be for learning. So yeah, it's an acronym. It took a while to come up with, but
Yeah.
I have loved sharing on this platform, and I feel like it's made me it's made me a stronger teacher sharing with others as well.
Sharing with others. Yeah. And I have realized that too. Like the more that I grow and share with others, my bucket is filled just as much, right? And I'm learning
Mhm.
too. So, like I'm going to North Carolina to speak at a school later this week. And I know that I'll take something from that school that they're doing that I've never seen before, right? And I'll start
Yep.
sharing it with the
Yep.
next school because their story needs to be heard too, right? Even though they're hiring me to come speak to them, I'm going to learn from them. So, another thing, Jenna, that I just really stuck out to me is like the intentionality that you have put into this. I think a lot
Yep.
of people, follow you on social media, Instagram, and see your content. And they're like, oh, she's just a teacher sharing what she does. And that's
Yep.
not the case. Like, and I know, we have a lot of friends in this network that share a lot of content, and it's the same thing for them. Like, this is a business. Like, you haven't intentionally put this together for educators to
Mhm.
maximize like their capabilities. So I love that, and I think it's great that I love that you shared that. I think a lot of people will see that strong teacher and say, "Oh, she must be an athlete, right? Or maybe she power lifts," and like it's as simple as that. No, like there's an acronym, there's a reason behind the name, and your content follows behind that. So that's really
Mhm.
cool. Thanks for sharing. I love that you shared that with our listeners. So
Oh,
um,
good.
this next question that I have is probably my favorite on the episode, and I've had some really good answers. But who has influenced you in your life? It can be both personally and professionally, or two separate people in those two buckets. But who's had influence on you?
I love this question too. And maybe it's we'll see if this is what usually people say, but personally it has to be my husband and my family. And they have been so supportive since day one. My everyone no one in my family is actually an educator but me. So it's like I'm paving this path within my family. A lot of my family, they're in the medical profession, so it's so different for them to see like my platform, but they've always been my biggest cheerleaders at the same time because they know my intense passion for education and helping others. So my husband's probably my biggest cheerleader, because in helping me grow my platform too, just because when I don't believe in myself, he's the one who also believes in me. Like, you got this, you can do this. So that's always super helpful. But that's personally. Professionally, so I've had some amazing online coaches in general that have helped me, just in education, and then also helped me with that strong teacher. And one was actually, so I started my whole platform in the middle of COVID. And that was because I was doing a lot of thinking, and I was like, I love teaching educators. I love teaching also on the computer. And I feel like I all of a sudden started creating all these things on Teachers Pay Teachers because we had so much time to do so many different things. So I started just creating. And then I stumbled upon someone who had a course. Her name is Kristen Moss, and she has been a coach for me since the beginning. And she was there when I had no audience, when I was speaking to no one.
Yeah.
And then also, like, I had some classes in the beginning too about classroom management, and the people who showed up were my colleagues. So you realize that you have all these supporters that are just right in front of you too. So they were the ones at my sessions on the computer, and they supported me, when I didn't have an audience to talk
Yeah.
to, which is amazing. So there's so many different people that have played a part. And then also all like I've listened to so many podcasts and I've read so many books. I know
Hmm.
that in general, like with me reading books, I'm a big personal development reader. And I always thought for the longest time, I'm like, man, like, why don't I love to read certain books? And it was because I was reading the wrong books. I needed
Yeah.
to read books that motivated me and were good for my personal development. So I love reading books by, for example, like Jenna Kutcher is one of my favorites, and then Michael Linson in Classroom Management. I love
Cool.
Harry Wong's books. So just reading books by these authors have really inspired me as well and have helped me professionally.
That's great. Perfect answer. That was great. But yeah, I share this when I speak. Find your people. Like,
Yep.
you've got your husband as your rock. Everybody has to have a rock, whether
Yep.
that's a spouse, a parent, a friend. But you've got to have somebody that you can go to, in your darkest hours and in your happiest, lightest hours as well. And you talk about your people, like your colleagues, like that may change, right? Your colleagues may change if you move
Yep.
schools, or they retire, but you're still gonna need to have people in your corner, and so it's so important to find your people. And I love that you're a lifelong learner. You set the tone
Mhm.
for that, and that's another thing I speak about a lot is for our students. Like they have to find the right topic, to fight the right
Yep.
genre for them to spark a love for reading. Because if we're just shoving curriculum down their throats and expect them to love reading, they're probably not going to become lifelong readers. But if we
Mhm.
allow them to have choice in their reading and to pick up a graphic novel, and we say it's okay to read that book, even though it's a graphic novel, then they may become lifelong readers because of that one graphic
Yep.
novel. So very
And
cool. Now, next question is, go ahead.
Oh, I was
You're gonna
going to
share.
say, I wanted to add on to your point about teaching your kids also to be lifelong learners. So, I actually share my story about reading with my students, and that helps them so much because I say sometimes it's not about, it's about getting interested in the right books to
Hmm.
develop your love for reading, right?
Yeah,
And sharing, I feel like your stories as an adult really helps your students also relate to their schoolwork and really developed interests and maybe things that they didn't know they were interested in. So that has
100%.
helped too.
Yeah, that's cool. You're such a role model for your students at all times in all aspects. Next question is, what has or is a game changer hack per se for your school life? What was
All
something
right.
that just
Well,
like totally changed the game for you?
relating to my classroom environment, right? Or
Yeah,
like in school?
yeah,
Yeah, so I think that social emotional learning and building a nurturing classroom environment through social learning has absolutely changed the game for me. When I
mm,
started to focus on skills that my students were lacking, they grew so much. And I really started to focus heavy on this during COVID because I realized my students had these really big emotions, and we were all coming from a different place after COVID. Like we all had different mindsets, we all had big emotions, and my job was to help my students manage their emotions and navigate through them, and also just to learn and grow as humans in my classroom. So when I started to focus on helping my students become better humans, I think everything changed because my whole backbone of my classroom, although I focus on my foundation, the next thing I really focus on is the social emotional learning and teaching my students skills like how to be kind, how to have good integrity, how to be trustworthy, how to be a good friend, how to make friends. So all of these things are so important. And once you do this, your classroom management also improves because
yeah,
now you can rely on all these skills and infuse them into your learning. So I think that's the ultimate game changer is going very heavy with the social emotional learning and helping your kids become better humans.
yeah. That is great. And I hope our listeners really, write that down and take a note of that, because whether you're a teacher, an administrator, right, paraprofessional, kitchen staff, custodian, like, we have to understand where our kids are coming from. I think a lot of times in education, and for teachers, like, we just expect our kids to come in and learn, right? Sit down and,
Yep.
and let's start learning. But we
Yep.
don't, one, like, respect their trauma,
Hmm.
understand where they're coming from, and like you just said, like, realize that they have not been taught how to be kind, how to be a good friend, right? How to be,
Hmm.
empathetic, like all of these things. And it's up to us to, if you take 10 minutes a day and hit on some of these
Yep.
things, all of a sudden the academics, like, literally just the waves just part, and it opens up and it allows you to do so much more with your kids. But you've got to put in, like, the groundwork, the legwork first, and make sure that they are ready to learn. So thank
Yep.
you for sharing that. But we're going to jump in now to the, I call it the open floor, where you get to share your expertise, your passions, and I know what you're going to share. You've already hit on it a couple of times, but I'm really excited for you to share this with our listeners. So, Jenna, the floor is yours.
All right. So thank you for giving me this opportunity. I really appreciate it. But I am, as I said earlier, I am really confident, and I love teaching about classroom management. And the reason why is because I was not confident in my own teacher's skin, and I want others to feel always confident and to feel calm and to feel not overwhelmed and to feel like I got this, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I recently launched a course in February. Now we're listening to this, it's April, but it's called the Classroom Management Playbook. And this is the exact roadmap and the guide that I wish I had when I first started teaching. And this is why I created this. So it inside this classroom management playbook, I teach educators how to create rules and consequences, develop detailed routines and procedures, teach their transitions, create organization systems for both your students and for yourself also, and to switch around their student seating. And you know what's cool about this, Ross, is the fact that it's not only to help teachers set a good foundation, but it could be used at any time during the year because it could help with doing a classroom reset. And
Yeah.
that's what, when I first started teaching in January, I felt like that's when I needed the reset, right? It wasn't at the start of the year. Sometimes it's in the middle of the year. So I want teachers to know that no matter what time of year it is, you could still fix your classroom management and still have the best year ever with your students, no matter what time.
That's
So
great.
don't, right?
Everybody thinks I've got to figure this out the first 2 weeks of school, and if I don't, my
Yep.
year's out. Right? That's not the
Yeah.
case.
Yeah, even like I have a colleague who's been teaching for 20 plus years. She's like, "But I'm going to start that next year." I'm like, "Why don't you start it now? Like you should start it now because then your year will be better." And here's the thing, when you start making changes, you start feeling more confident and you're like, "Okay, now I can use these changes for next year." I mean, yeah, ideally it's always great to start fresh with a new year, but realistically, you have to go back into your classroom anyway, right? The
Yep.
next day. And what's cool is that kids are they're so moldable, and you could be like, all right, we're doing this. And they're like, they're ready for it. So that's why I created this course. And I'm really excited I have a new course coming out. This is a mini course and it's called Tackling the Recess and Lunch Drama. And I actually I asked my audience on Instagram, I said, what would be a good name for this? And they all voted for this name. And the reason why is because there's so much that happens during our school day that is more than just the content areas, right? When we send our students to recess and lunch, a lot of times we're just hoping they do well. But we can't just hope that they do well. We have to prepare them to do well and give them the skills to do well at recess and lunch. So, and a lot of these things that I'm talking about at recess and lunch, they happen throughout the school day too. So this
Yeah.
course is about teaching teachers how to teach their students to problem solve
Yeah.
and teaching them the skills like I talked about earlier, how to be a good friend and how to include others, how to be kind. So when we create this foundation and teach our kids the skills, they will thrive. So I mean, I've loved creating these courses for teachers, and I'm just so passionate about helping teachers become strong and confident, really, in classroom management.
Yeah, I love that. the one word that I always use as a teacher and a principal was proactive. And I feel like
Yes.
that's exactly what you're doing with the luncheon room and recess
Yep.
drama, right? Is
Yep.
if we're reactive to this, like we're not going to stop it. It's just going to
Yep.
continue to happen and happen and happen. But if we can get ahead of it, teach kids the proper ways on how to handle situations, because in the history of school, right, hundreds of years, thousands of years, there's always been recess and playground drama.
Yep.
Like you watch those old movies, the recess fights, they were happening then, they're still happening now.
Yep.
But what can we do to deter those, right? Or
Hmm.
help kids work through those problems?
Hmm.
And I feel like that's exactly what you're doing, and it is drama. I like the name.
Yeah.
I know I would call a group of kids into my office and be like, "We're gonna end this drama today," and they'd be like offended. This isn't drama. Yeah, it is drama. And if we ignore it and we don't address it, then it's
That's
going to
it.
lead into bigger issues, and
Yep.
it affects your academics, your classroom time, which
Hmm.
is valuable, right?
Hmm.
So when that kid goes home at the end of the day, if you
Yep.
haven't addressed it, then what do you think is the one thing that they're going to remember from that school day?
It's that.
The
It's the
drama.
drama.
The, they
It's the
don't,
drama.
one thing that came out of your
Yep.
mouth that you taught that day, all they remember is the drama that happened in the lunchroom.
Hmm.
So, that's great. Give us I don't want to overshare too much, but just give us a little like teaser of what we could find in this resource.
So in this resource, you will find how to teach I call it two magical sentence stems. And they are can be a game changer for your classroom. And if you teach your students these two magical sentence stems, they will use them all year to the point where they will go home and use them with their siblings, because I've gotten reports from parents like, how did you make this happen, Miss Everts? How did you do this? They
Yeah,
like now problem solving with their siblings. This is awesome.
this is
So
great.
right, so the two magical sentence stems, and also how to give a genuine apology. I talk about, because when they apologize, kids all of a sudden they feel so much better about it, and then they don't go home talking about it because
Yeah,
apologies were made. And also how to be kind, how to be a good friend, how to include others. So a lot of these things, they're pre-taught at the start of the year. Like you said, we're proactive about it so that when they get to a situation, they can handle it also and feel confident to do it on their own, versus always telling their teacher everything that happened and then the teacher problem solving for them. Right. So
yeah,
that's the whole goal.
100%. That happens all day long. Kids tattling on each
Yep.
other. No, you can handle it, right? I tell my own
Yep.
daughters that they come, storming in like tattling on each other. I'm like, "Have you tried to resolve this?" Well, you go back and try to resolve it the ways that I've
Yep.
taught you, and if it's still happening, then come tell me. But no, it's great. Thanks for sharing those teasers. I'm hooked. I know we're gonna have a lot of our audience hooked as well, and are going to want to purchase this and share it and use it. All right, in their classrooms and in their schools. So, anything else you want to share on that part, Jenna?
Um, so so just get excited for it. I think that
Yeah.
being proactive is the most important thing you could do in your classroom, and teaching your kids skills
Hmm.
that are social emotional related, and just skills in general will help your classroom thrive. And it's really a long game with it. So don't expect the results to come right away. You might teach them all these things at the start of the year, and you might start to see them come out later on in the year. So around like February, and later on in the year, and then you notice your whole classroom has changed all of a sudden, right?
Yeah.
So it's not something that happens overnight. Kids need a while to practice these skills, but be patient with it, and you will see amazing changes where parents are coming up to you and saying, how did you do this? This is absolutely amazing. My child is having these conversations with me, because I mean, I've had it happen to myself. So I know that this will be a game changer for you and also for your students.
It's great, and it can transform a school too, because when you
Yeah.
start doing it, not only do the parents ask, but the
Yep.
teachers down the hall say, "What are you doing? I see your kids in the hallways at recess, and they're
Yep.
behaving and bleeding this way. I want to know." So, I guess we've got a couple more questions, but before we do that, like pretty important piece here, how can our listeners get a hold of this resource?
So I'm posting about it all over That Strong Teacher. So that's
Yeah,
my Instagram. So it's just that and then Strong Teacher all in one. And you could also find it by clicking the link in my bio, or I'm sending out a ton of content, and then you comment the word recess and you could get access to the course if you want to purchase it, and then you'll read all about it within the sales page. So just going into my Instagram, That Strong Teacher.
perfect. All right, thank you. I just want to make sure we got that out there. Um, you've shared a lot of advice for educators today, but my last couple questions are advice for educators and students. So first thing, just blanket, what do you give? What's a very vital, important piece of advice that you would give to educators, whether they're in their first year or in their 20th year?
I love that. So I want you to remember that as an educator, even though you might feel like you are always supposed to be an educator, like this is your number one thing, you were meant to do this, there is still, everyone is a beginner. So it's okay if you're a beginner in learning something. So you've been teaching for 20 plus years and you're a beginner at learning a curriculum for the first time. And it is okay if you're a beginner, you're just starting in the classroom in general, and you're a beginner at classroom management like I was, right? You can't compare your chapter one to someone's chapter 21 or however long they've been teaching. So give yourself grace, keep learning and keep growing, and eventually you will be strong and confident. And no matter through this whole process, your students probably love you, and as long
Mhm.
as you love them, they will love you. So don't
That's
worry
perfect.
about that too, right?
I remember those lessons that completely bomb, and your kids are like, "This was the best day ever." I'm like, I don't feel like you learned anything," but your kids loved it, and that's what matters at the end of the day. And then, what advice do you give to your students?
So I we always talk about being kind is the most important thing that you can do. I always tell my class, I give them this life secret every single year, and they remember it till the end of the year. I say, the kinder you are, and I get like, I make them come real close, and I go,
Yeah.
the kinder you are, the more friends you'll have, right? So they remember this the whole year, and I love that. So I can say like, what's the life secret about being kind? Someone will tell me, and they love this because they know it's true. And I say, your energy, and the kinder you are, you'll attract more people. And also the opposite is true as well. Another big thing we say in our class is, it's okay to not know, but it's not okay to not try. So
Yeah.
I love having my students try everything, and we always talk about making mistakes and basically just learning from them. And it's okay if we're not going to be perfect at everything,
Mm,
and that's okay. That's part of life, right?
love
So just making, knowing that mistakes are okay and that we learn and grow from them is the best thing ever. And then we always just say like, just be a good human, right? We always want to be a good human.
Wow. Thank you. Seriously. You have, as you were talking there, I just am imagining 20, what, the 25
20,
young
21 kids, yeah.
21 kids that are so lucky to have you as a
Aw,
teacher and to share those things. So thank you for what you do in your classroom for those kids year in and year out. And now, you have the opportunity to make a difference in hundreds of schools with thousands of students. And I know you're doing that with what you're doing with that strong teacher. So thanks,
yep.
Jenna, again for taking the time today to come on and just share your voice, share your passions, and it was a really great conversation. And I'm just thankful that I was able to have it with you, and now we get to share it with our audience.
Yeah, I love this. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
So as we wrap up, I didn't share this with you, Jenna. On my last guest was Nick Edwards. He's a principal from Jersey. And so we've got this East Coast accent in the last two episodes. I'm
I
going to
love
go
it.
back and see which one had the best accent. But let's see. Next episode, we're going to stay on the East Coast, or are we going to venture out maybe Midwest or West Coast? But thanks again, Jenna. Thank you to all of our listeners for listening in to another episode of the School Life series. And as always, thanks for School Life for sponsoring this podcast. And as I always say, be great today.